and I am excited about this training today. Spirituality has been something that's really benefited me in my mental health. And I love how it can be so personalized. Everyone has their own take on what spirituality means. And so, my goal today isn't to convert anybody to my cult or anything like that, I promise. Although I personally think I'd be a great cult leader, but maybe in another lifetime. But it's really just to encourage you that if you already have a spiritual practice, that you continue doing what you're doing and that you maintain that. And also, if you do not have a spiritual practice, perhaps you'll be inspired to cultivate one in your own life. And so, by giving you the benefits of spiritual practices and kind of going over what a lot of the common definitions of spirituality is, maybe it'll give you more inspiration to go ahead and try. And I think sometimes we just as humans just naturally behave in spiritual type ways and maybe don't even realize it. And so maybe today you can notice some patterns of behavior in your own life that you can attribute to a spiritual practice and say, I'm already doing those things. And so again, it's not supposed to encourage or discourage one specific way of thinking or living. It's just really about understanding how it benefits all of us, and whatever that practice looks like to you. It's really just about connecting with yourself. And I feel like whenever we talk about mental health, whenever we talk about stress resilience, a really good place to start is within. And so that's what spiritual practice is really essentially trying to cultivate, is that connection with your inner self. So we'll go ahead and get into it. My agenda today is to define spirituality for you and to give you some different types of spirituality that are commonly practiced around the globe. We're going to touch briefly on the differences between religion and spirituality and see if they're the same thing. And then I'm going to go over some common ways that people practice and also some potential pitfalls briefly. We'll touch on that. And then I'm going to go into some techniques that we call contemplative practice and the benefits of those. We're also going to talk about spiritual health. That's kind of a new phrase. It's kind of come up out of the positive psychology movement. And then briefly, we're going to talk about deepening the spiritual mindset. So this may be a bit quicker. Typically, my trainings are about an hour. Sometimes I talk the whole time and sometimes I don't. I anticipate this not being a full hour of me talking. So there should be time at the end to discuss, give us any insights or encouragement, which I think is important whenever we meet to really cultivate that community among each other, okay? Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Linda. I'm glad you joined us today. And it says L. Williams. I'm not sure what your first name is, but hello. We're just getting started, so you haven't missed anything. Oh, and I forgot to remind you, for those of you who have yet to do so, please put your email in the chat so that I can send you a post survey and get your feedback on this presentation and also suggestions for potential future trainings as well, okay? But you all know the drill, right? All right, so what is spirituality? Well, according to the International Consensus Conference on Spiritual Care in Healthcare, say that 5 times fast, spirituality is the way that we seek ultimate meaning, purpose, connection, value, or transcendence. So this could include organized religion, but it does extend well beyond to include ways of finding ultimate meaning by connecting, for example, with family, community, or nature, okay? So for a long time, people like Freud and other luminaries in psychology actually said that religious practices were linked to mental illness. So they envisioned reality or religion as a pathology that indicated a mental health problem in patients. So for this reason, psychology will usually avoid religion, right? And spirituality for many decades. But today we see this viewpoint as counter to the human condition. Spirituality is widespread, it's nearly universal, and it's a human trait that people approach in many different ways. But it has the same goal, essentially. The goal is that they wish to find meaning and value in everyday life, to make sense of life, and to connect with something larger. So spirituality is a way of integrating our own experiences with the idea of something more, something overarching and more timeless than ourselves, okay? So spirituality is a broad concept of beliefs in something beyond the self. And it strives to answer questions about the meaning of life and how people are connected to each other, truths about the universe, and other mysteries of the human existence. So spirituality can offer us a worldview that suggests there's more to life than just what we experience on a sensory and physical level, right? And it instead suggests that there's something greater that connects all beings to each other. So it's kind of this idea that you are not a singularity, that there is a connection with the earth, with the universe, with other people, with creation itself, okay? And so this can involve religious traditions, that center on a belief in a higher power, but it can also involve holistic beliefs in an individual connection to others and the world as a whole. So spirituality has been a source of comfort and relief from stress for multitudes of people. And while people use many different paths to find God or a higher power, research has shown that those who are more religious or more spiritual and use that spirituality to cope with challenges and life experiences actually have mental health and well-being benefits. So there's a number of different reasons why people might turn to spirituality. And some of the reasons, of course, this is an exhaustive list, but these are some of the main reasons why people choose to be spiritual or incorporate spiritual practice. To deepen their relationships with themselves and with others, to understand the idea of an afterlife. Even if you don't believe that there is an afterlife, you can use spirituality to come to that conclusion. To find purpose and meaning. So exploring spirituality can help you find answers to philosophical questions, like what's the meaning of life, or what purpose does my life serve? People also use spirituality to cope with feelings of stress, depression, and anxiety. Spiritual experiences can be helpful when you're coping with just everyday life stresses. They use it to restore hope and optimism. That's a big one for me. Spirituality can help you develop a more hopeful outlook on life. And I think a lot of that has to do with kind of broadening or expanding our perception and realizing that there's so much that is interconnected and so much that we do that affect other people. And I think that when you kind of zoom out instead of looking very, like you can't see past your nose, but if you zoom out and you see the bigger picture, for me, that does inspire a more hopeful outlook on life. And then finally, to find a sense of community and support, right? So spiritual traditions often involve organized religions or groups. And so becoming a part of that group can actually serve as an important social support for you. So religion versus spirituality. Let me fix my screen here. There you go. So are religion and spirituality the same thing? No, they're not. So religion is a type of codified spirituality where most, if not all of the followers practice the same faith and they pray to the same deity. So religions have specific ceremonies and rituals, specific meeting places and congregations. And religions also have rules with consequences for breaking them. And they tend to indoctrinate children from a very young age. That's where you'll find like youth groups and Sunday schools and teen Bible studies and things like that. It's to raise people up from a very young age into this religion. Okay, so here's a little side by side. Spirituality can be practiced individually, and religion is often practiced in community. Spirituality doesn't have to adhere to a specific set of rules, but religion is usually based on a specific set of rules and customs. Spirituality will often focus on a personal journey of discovery and discovering what's meaningful in life to you. And religion will often focus on the belief in deities or gods, religious texts, and traditions. So spirituality encompasses religion, right? So it's kind of like spirituality is the umbrella that religion is settled under. It's just a way to practice spiritualities through religion. So spiritual practice can also rely on a lot of the religious practice, like community specific rules and customs, specific texts, but it doesn't have to. So anyone who's ever stood on a mountaintop and felt awe at that view, or marveled at ancient architecture, or felt a sense of like profound fellowship, even like at like an AA meeting, that's them encountering spirituality. It's accessible to all of us, and even those who are uninterested in or who have had negative experiences with religion, spirituality can still be an important part of their lives. They can still rediscover that individual spiritual sense. So in essence, spirituality will help us to interpret life. From love to hate, birth and death, success to grave injustice, spiritual practices will guide us. So regularly turning into the spiritual side can increase your spiritual health and in time, your mental wellness as well. And we'll talk about spiritual health a little bit later. excuse me. So signs of spirituality. So of course, there's no one way to do it, and there's no one way to be spiritual. And I really don't think there's a wrong way to be spiritual. But here's some signs. Obviously, it's not a single path or belief system. There's many ways to experience spirituality and benefit from that. But some people, it's a belief in a higher power or specific religious practice. And for others, it might involve just, again, that sense of connection or that higher state or that sense of interconnectedness with the rest of humanity and nature. And so some signs that you might see, if you are spiritual or if you're around somebody who's spiritual, these characteristics might seem familiar to you. So asking deep questions about topics such as suffering or what happens after death, deepening connections with other people, experiencing compassion and empathy for others. It's very spiritual. Experiencing that feeling of interconnectedness, like we are all part of the same species, we're all part of the same community, we're all part of the same human family, that kind of thing. Feelings of awe and wonder, seeking happiness beyond material possessions or external rewards, seeking meaning and purpose, and wanting to make the world a better place. So of course, not everyone's going to experience or express spirituality in the same way. Some people seek spiritual experiences in every aspect of their lives, while others might be more likely to have those feelings under specific conditions or at certain locations. So for example, some people may be more likely to have spiritual experiences at a religious temple or a church. And others might have these feelings just when they're outside enjoying nature, okay? And sometimes you have both, right? Sometimes you can go to church and then hit the beach and still feel that same awe and wonder and connectedness at both places, right? So here's some types of spirituality. So of course, there's many different types. This isn't an exhaustive list again, but some of the examples on how people can get in touch with their own spirituality could be breath work, meditation or quiet time, new age spirituality, prayer, servicing to their community. That can be a very great way to experience spirituality. Spending time in nature, going on a spiritual retreat, or even yoga. Yoga can be very restorative. And at least for me, it's very grounding. And so I definitely experience spirituality through yoga. So other people express their spirituality through religious traditions, such as Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, humanism, Islam, Judaism, and Sikhism. So it is important to remember that there are many other spiritual traditions that exist throughout the world, including traditional African and indigenous spiritual practices. And these types of spiritual practices can be particularly important to groups or communities of people who have been subjected to the effects of colonialism. And really what that is just saying is the colonizers brought with them Christianity. And in that colonization, a lot of the indigenous and traditional cultures and spiritual practices of those people were destroyed. And so reclaiming those practices can be very spiritual and very healing for a lot of communities. So how do you practice spirituality? It's kind of a loaded question because I don't think there's really one way to say this is spiritual and this isn't. But again, we're going to give you some broad examples here. So whether you're going to rediscover a forgotten spiritual path, reinforce your commitment to an already established one, or wanting to learn more about spirituality, there's countless ways to start expanding and exploring your spiritual side to improve your well-being. Spirituality is a very personal experience, and everyone's spiritual path is going to be unique. But research shows that some spiritual stress relief strategies have been helpful to many, regardless of your faith tradition. So some things that you can do to start exploring your spirituality, pay attention to how you're feeling, right? Part of being or embracing spirituality means that you also embrace what it means to be human, and that's the good and the bad, right? Focusing on others. That's a huge marker in various traditions, spiritual or religious. Opening your heart, feeling empathy, helping others, those are important aspects of spirituality. Meditating. So try spending 10 to 15 minutes each morning engaging in some form of meditation. And that could be prayer, that could be breath work, that could be just sitting and listening to the birds chirp outside, okay? Just that time of introspection or that time of looking inward. Practicing gratitude. So doing a gratitude journal or recording what you're grateful for each day, or telling somebody what you're grateful for each day. That can be a great reminder of what's most important to you and what brings you the greatest happiness, right? And you can try mindfulness. So by becoming more mindful, can become more aware and appreciative of the present moment. Mindfulness encourages you to be less judgmental, both of yourself and of others, which is huge, and to focus more on the present moment rather than dwelling on the past or the future. Okay. So, common approaches to spirituality. So, the ways in which spirituality manifests among the world's many cultures is nearly endless. Spiritual practices may vary according to several aspects of your life or your surroundings, your religious upbringing, your choices, your geographical location, right, or their culture, and the way that your mind works. I think it's fascinating to think that, I was born and raised in America, and my first faith was Christianity. But had I been born and raised in another culture or in another geographical location, my first faith would have been whatever the dominant culture's faith was. And so it's just kind of interesting for me to think about, if I had been born in India or if I had been born in China, what would my base faith look like? So spirituality can take countless forms, but there are some common approaches to spirituality. Again, mindfulness practices, so meditation, prayer, reflection, yoga, right? Reading with rituals, which might include a holy text, self-actualization books or literature, spending time with art or music or other forms of media that increase your spiritual connection to the world or other people. Spending time in nature, so hiking, backpacking, kayaking, hunting. Although I'm sure there are some religions who would say hunting isn't very spiritual, but then there's others who say it absolutely is. So again, it's that variation between different cultures and different ideas of spirituality. A religious service or worship, right? Complete with rituals and ceremonies, like going to a church or going to a mosque. Creative practices of your own, painting, sculpting, writing, welding even, right? That can be considered spirituality or a way that you practice your own personal spirituality. And then, of course, journaling or recording your thoughts in some way. So what are some potential pitfalls of spirituality? Of course, if you look into any type of spiritual practice, if you're looking into becoming part of a spiritual group, you will often get the love bombing, get that everything is great, we're all happy, this is the answer, this is the solution. But then ultimately that kind of fades off and you start to realize, what aspects apply to you, what aspects don't apply to you. And so there definitely are some pitfalls. Spirituality isn't 100% foolproof. So we're just going to talk a little bit about some of them. So one potential pitfall of spirituality is a phenomenon that we call spiritual bypassing. So that involves basically the tendency to use spirituality as a way to avoid or sidestep problems, emotions, or conflicts. So for example, rather than apologizing for some type of emotional wound that maybe you caused somebody else, you might bypass the problem by simply excusing it and saying, well, everything happens for a reason, right? Or suggesting that the other person just needs to focus on the positive. Those phrases in and of themselves are not bad, but if you're using that to bypass your responsibility in a situation where maybe you've hurt somebody or even excuse somebody else's poor behavior, that's when we kind of creep into that pitfall of spiritual bypassing. So spirituality can enrich your life and lead to a number of benefits, but it's important to be cautious and not let spiritual ideas lead to pitfalls like dogmatism or reason to ignore the needs of others. So dogmatism is just to be dogmatic. And to be dogmatic means that you follow a set of rules no matter what. So those rules might be religious, they might be philosophical rules, they could even be just made up rules. But dogmatic people will never waver in their beliefs. So it's really difficult to change their minds. And dogmatic goes back to the Greek word dogma, which means what one thinks is true. So of course, I think that we all have a right to believe what we want to believe and to define truth according to our experiences and our perception of the world. But that doesn't mean that that's for everybody, right? So to be dogmatic is to kind of follow a doctrine that's related to morals and faith or a set of beliefs that's passed down and it's never questioned. It also refers to like arrogant opinions based on unproven theories or even despite the facts. So an example of someone dogmatic, they might insist that dinosaurs never existed or that women shouldn't drive. It was widely believed for a long time that women couldn't drive because the speed of the vehicle would cause our uteruses to fly out of our bodies. Of course, we know that there's facts that refute that. That's not true. But a dogmatic belief system would just say, well, I believe it's true, so it is. Okay, so that's basically what dogmatism is. So contemplative practices. Contemplative practices are activities that will guide and direct your attention to a specific focus. So looking inward, reflection, concentration on a specific sensation or a concept. Many spiritual traditions have a long history of using these practices to increase compassion and their empathy, their attention, as well as quiet the mind. So meditation can induce feelings of calm and clear-headedness, as well as improve concentration and attention. So there's a brain researcher, of course, I have to always throw that in there, named Richard Davidson. And in his research, it showed that meditation increases the brain's gray matter, the density of the gray matter. And so that can reduce sensitivity to pain, enhance your immune system, help you regulate difficult emotions, and relieve stress. I can get some more of that, please. Mindfulness meditation in particular has been proven helpful for people with depression and anxiety, cancer, fibromyalgia, and chronic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, type 2 diabetes, chronic fatigue syndrome, and cardiovascular disease. And prayer may also elicit the relaxation response, along with feelings of hope and gratitude and compassion, all of which obviously have a positive effect on your overall well-being. So there are several types of prayer, but many of which are rooted in the belief that there is a higher power or a God that has some level of influence over your life. So this belief can provide a sense of comfort and support in difficult times. And they've actually done studies on this. And so a recent study found that clinically depressed adults who believed that their prayers were heard by a concerned presence or a higher power responded much better to treatment than those who did not believe. Another one for contemplative practice is yoga. This is a centuries-old spiritual practice, and the aim of yoga is to create a sense of union with you, the person doing it, the practitioner, through physical postures like different stretches, yoga poses, also ethical behaviors, right, and breath expansion. A lot of times people hear yoga and they just think of the exercise, but there's actually an entire contemplative practice, ethical practice, spiritual practice that's underneath it, the philosophy of yoga. So you can be a yogi and just focus on the philosophy of yoga and not do any of the body work, right? So it's very interesting. It's not just exercise. But the systemic practice of yoga has been found to reduce inflammation and stress, to decrease depression and anxiety, to lower your blood pressure, and increase feelings of well-being. And again, journaling, it comes back over and over again. It's often overlooked, but it is a contemplative practice that can help you become more aware of your inner life and feel more connected to your experiences and the world around you. So again, they've done studies on journaling, and they show that writing during difficult times might help you find meaning in life's challenges and to become more resilient in the face of obstacles. I often kind of think of journaling as a way to just kind of talk it out, but it's private, it's just writing. For me, if I have an issue that I need to kind of square away in my mind and I can talk it out with somebody, it's easier for me to kind of find the pieces that fit together. And journaling has a similar effect. So now we're going to talk about spiritual health. So what is spiritual health? So as the idea of mental health and spirituality have grown more mainstream, the term spiritual health has cropped up more often. And so many people will use mental health as a synonym for spirituality, but they're actually different. So spirituality is a broad term that references experiences or states of being, where spiritual health is something that you can cultivate or work toward. So spirituality can take a different form for everybody, and spiritual health can apply to any type of spirituality or religion. So while spirituality is a source of potential that everyone can access if they wish to, spiritual health is a spectrum on which everyone falls. So because of this, it's a bit more concrete. Oops, I skipped ahead too far. My bad. All right, there we go. So here's some common traits of spiritually healthy people. So being reserved, having reserved and thoughtful emotional reactions to life's greatest challenges, a healthy ability to feel and express emotions were called for, especially when you're dealing with grief or loss. Having a healthy ability to feel and express emotions, I read that. Daily practices to help process hardships, changes, and emotions. The ability to deal with challenges posed by other humans with kindness and understanding. Having flexible beliefs that can adjust as needed to new circumstances or information. Remember, we talked earlier about dogmatism, where you have a very inflexible mind and you're not changed, your beliefs are not changed with new information. Spiritual health is flexibility, where you have new information and you can draw new conclusions. Mindfulness and presence when eating, exercising, working, or just enjoying your time with loved ones, is being in that present moment. The ability to explain your inner state to others if it's necessary or if you desire, just kind of knowing yourself. And so, of course, if you don't recognize these traits in yourself, that's okay. It's not a big deal. They do take time to cultivate. And a spiritual leader or a mental health professional can help you find ways to strengthen that through practice. Okay. Again, anytime you hear something being referred to as a practice, do not anticipate getting quick results. Okay. It takes dedication, it takes intention. Okay. So it's like I said before, spiritual health is a spectrum. So we're all on it. And you can choose to cultivate these practices and really increase your spiritual health over time if you feel it's necessary or that it will benefit you. And so now we're going to talk again briefly about deepening the spiritual mindset. So once you have successfully established a spiritual basis for living, you can deepen your spiritual mindset. So this will often require looking inward. So through practices like listening, stepping into another's shoes, looking for the best in others, cultivating compassion and forgiveness. Again, these are not overnight traits that you develop. I think every time I prayed for patience, I got pregnant. That's how the universe was teaching me patience. And it took a long time, but I think I'm getting somewhere. So as other people form an integral part of your spiritual mindset, these practices are often people-centric. So that might include community service or volunteering, helping others on their spiritual journey, right? So you can lead a meditation, lead a Bible study, yoga, journaling sessions, or something similar. Taking on a service program like in your faith community, or a service position in your faith community, or a 12-step program, right? Volunteering your time to help others strengthen their spiritual health, or reading or writing literature about spiritual topics. So continuous attention to your spiritual health will likely improve your connection to the world and other beings that inhabit it. So such mindfulness also enhances your sense of joy, community, and belonging. But it is important to keep in mind that not all spiritual practices are healthy. So I just want to encourage you that if you're looking for a spiritual practice, make sure it aligns with your values. Make sure it aligns with your goals, right, and your mindset. I think it's very important to be mindful that spirituality, whether that's religion or humanism or whatever you want to call it, it involves human beings, and human beings are flawed. And so somebody's interpretation of a spiritual text or interpretation of a meditation practice or whatever, that's their interpretation, right? And so be very mindful of how you interpret specific things, how you apply them, and make sure that they just align with your core values before you dive headfirst, right? We don't want anyone accidentally ending up in a cult. So that is the information I have for you today. It's very quick, but I like that we have time to have discussions. And here are my sources if you're interested. And I can always send them to you in an email if you prefer. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. Oop. And then